back in the shops Monday morning on the 65 Fastback. Going to be welding the front end on today. Hopefully my goal is by the end of the day, have the whole front end welded, grind down the welds, weld in the torque boxes, and also hang the doors, hopefully, and get them lined up to the B-pillars, to the rockers. I'll show you what all is kind of involved there and what I'm looking at whenever I'm lining that stuff up. So let's check out the pieces that I got and what I got to do to put them in, and then we'll start cranking it out. Hopefully we get some action shots today, so let's get right to it. Just to show the points where I'm going to be welding this front end together. It's nice when it's just a three-piece left, right-hand shock tower assembly and the radiator support. So fender extensions, which I picked up over the weekend, I forgot to order those. I got them clamped in place, measured out to where they should be. Just for an example of what I'm actually lining things up to, like just that small piece there, I take my measurements off the cow corner. And also I set the fender in place just to double check in the end, but I'm measuring out to the fender mounting holes. That's how I'm lining it up this way, and in between I have measurements in between both aprons, the rear aprons there. That keeps it so it's the right distance apart, and also from the cow side panel into that apron, so it centers everything to where it needs to be. And once I get all those measurements lined up, clamp them in place and weld them. So I'm going to start with those, weld those extensions in place, and then I'll just go the whole way around. Alright, we got all those welds done, finished up. I'm going to go back and grind them down then, but all the way around. Everything's squared up, tight where it should be. So now I'm going to be putting the torque boxes in. And one thing that I do if it's getting torque boxes, these 65.6s didn't get torque boxes, convertibles did, which this is using convertible floor pan setups here. It's got the inner rocker onto it, which you can see there. So while I have the whole front end supported with the front jack stands, I got the strut tower brace in. I'm going to set the torque box in place, weld that all tight before I remove these front jack stands or that export brace, so it will finish holding everything together, because adding this torque box in here ties a lot of this front end together. It's welded to the outer rocker, well, to the inner rocker here, to the inner rocker. It's tied to the floor pan, well, to the toe board, tied to the floor supports, to the frame rail. It ties to all of those pieces, so it holds everything together. So, and these are a two-piece from Dynacorn. I already put my holes in it to prep it, where I'm going to weld them together. So we're going to slide the upper piece in place like this. So it's going to go in there like that, and I'll tack it into place. And then I'm going to take the outer one, get that up into place, vice grip it all the way around, and then I'll go back and I'll weld all of it to all of the body spots, and then I'll weld the torque box upper and lower pieces together. Alright, so I'm at the point where I'm about to hang the doors. I got to put the door hinges on. I got everything set up for that. But what I did was welded everything, ground down all the welds. So everything is done and ready to go for whenever fenders get mounted, primer all the bare spots. I added torque box gussets also, just to help strengthen it up. But torque box is completely welded in. Strut rod brackets. Onto the other side, driver's side torque box gusset. Everything up to date is ground down now, and inside. Everything's welded around the torque boxes onto the inner rail and the floor pan. I just have to make some patches to finish out that outside. But so now I'm going to move on to mounting the doors and get them lined up. So I got my hardware, bigger threaded ones, original plates I had, original door hinges I had, which I already rebuilt. I got the bolts ready for them. We're going to put them onto the door loosely, and then I'll set the door up in place, bolt that door to the doorpost, and get it somewhat snug enough that I can move it yet, and then I'll try and adjust it. It's tough doing it by yourself, but I'm so used to it now. But just trying to get it to line up off of basically 3 points, 2 or more for sure. I'm lining that front door edge off of the outer rocker lip there, where it's going to guide on off of the fender. So that line right there is going to come the whole way up with the door. And on the back side, we're getting it somewhat lined up with that door post. That could fluctuate a little bit because this is movable, so you can it helps work into your advantage to get your quarter panel to line up better. And then I'm using the top of that rocker to line up the bottom of that door to get a nice even gap the whole way down. So that's what I'm lining up, and also getting it a little bit, the gap up here about right where it hugs this pillar. Just trying to get it somewhat close, enough that it's close to mount the full quarters on. So that's all I'm doing, is getting it roughly where it should be in the final stages. And then I'll move on to the back end and get the quarter panels lined up. And then depending on how the quarter panels fit to that back of the door gap, I'll adjust the door a little bit, maybe move it forward or back or tilt it to get it to line up the best. There's lots of little tricks to getting these doors and quarters to line up. Sometimes you have to twist the door, but they usually fit pretty good. So we'll see how this car lines up in the end. But that's what I'm going to do now. Put those door hinges on, mount the doors, and then I should be able to call it a day, hopefully. So I just wanted to add this in, just because I just lined this up. It literally only took 5 minutes to set this door up in place, which is pretty impressive compared to lots of doors that I've hung, which is saying a lot for this Dynacorn one-piece side that they sell. If you've seen my first video, you could see what that actually looked like. It's just a rocker attached to the inner structure pieces, with the wheelhouses just screwed in place. But that's what I'm going for. I got a pretty even gap the whole way down. I didn't even mess with that B-pillar to like try and move it a little bit. So it does line up real nice there, enough that the quarter panel is gonna overlap the top of that B-pillar and then get welded to it. So you want that, that's where you're gonna set your gap in the end, to get your gaps right. And then the lines on it are really impressive also. Looking down the rocker, it's a nice even gap the whole way. So that's pretty impressive. I just wanted to add that in there. And the line where it's going to be meeting the fender. Without putting the fender up on it, it's got a nice curve to it. It flows nice, along with meeting the B-pillar nice and riding the rocker nice. So overall, first impression of these one-piece sides, really nice in my opinion. So I'm going to mount the other side, the door on the other side, and see how that one is. It could be a different story, but I would imagine it's going to be the same, but I'll let you know if it differs. And so let's hang that other door and see what it looks like. Stepping over to the passenger side, I got the door lined up and almost as good as the other side. There's a little bit of things that need a little bit of tweaking on this side, but overall it fits real nice. Hugs around the A-pillar the way it's supposed to. Lined up with the fender to the rocker spots and the door on the back side. Let's close that. You can see just a nice gap in between. And like I said, this pillar will move back and forth a little bit to give it that little bit to get your quarter to sit exactly where you want to against this door. The only thing that I'm seeing, which the door, I mean, there's no way around it. Rocker line on the bottom is nice, even the whole way. I don't want it any larger of a gap than that. You don't want any larger of a gap than that, in my opinion. And when you come up to the top side, that B-pillar sticks up above the door a smidge, which I've had that before when I changed B-pillars. You have to trim these a good bit of the times to get them to set your quarter where it needs to be. So your quarter is going to end up sitting on top of that, being up too high. I trim that down, and sometimes, depending on how the door lines up once it's closed, you can see that B-pillar is set in a little bit, which is how it's supposed to be. You can see there at the top it's going to be tight. Once I get that quarter panel on and test fit it once, that'll tell me. Sometimes I have to tweak the door, actually grab it. I put my knee at the bottom. Like for this one on this side, it's tight at the top. I would actually put my knee at the bottom, hold it, and tweak that door outward to get it to line up right. Which it doesn't affect the door in any way or anything that's lining up into it. They shift from how they're reproduced. And in the end, I do this on every door. I'll weld these skins because they're not really welded fast. Where the skin is actually going onto the door. There is tack marks on it in places, but they really just shift all over the place. So once I tweak it where it needs to be, I'll go along and I'll weld in a couple different spots down the bottom, up that, so then it doesn't twist anymore. But that's the passenger side, lines up good, no complaints. So tomorrow I'll be on to test fitting this back end. I'm going to pull this rear window panel out to get it out of the way, because the quarters actually have to sit underneath of that, so it's easier just to remove that because I just have it vice gripped in place. Set both quarters in place, taillight panel, then I'll set that rear window panel assembly in place, and then I'll start lining up everything, trunk corners, just to get an idea if everything's going to line up, the trunk, and make sure everything's going to line up. Wheelhouses, they're just screwed in place, and make sure that lines up to the wheel wells. Everything needs to work together, so there's a lot of fitment going into that. But so that's what's to look forward into tomorrow. I'm going to try and get another video out after tomorrow. I might just save it all into one with doing all the quarters, so it might be out the next day. But that's where I'm at, and that's what will be in the next video. And with the doors being hung, that's exactly where I wanted to be at the end of the day. It's about 5:30 here. Got everything accomplished that I said in the beginning of the video, which is always a good day. Front end's welded on, torque box is all in, put the gussets in, doors are hung where they need to be. So tomorrow I'll just start cruising on the back end and get everything, start lining it up. Hopefully by, not the end of the day tomorrow, because it takes a little while to get everything lined up, but at the end of the day, the next day, which would be Wednesday, everything should be pretty much lined up where it needs to be, and then I can start welding the entire back end. So look forward for that in the next video. But thanks for watching this video. I appreciate everyone that's watched this series. It really has caught fire these last couple days of actual people that have watched it. So I'm hoping that it helps people do their own jobs. Or if you just enjoy watching this process, we're going to get it to its final shell, sitting on all four wheels, and then it's going to be for sale. So we'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for watching.